ID to vote. Is there any other way to read it other than they want illegals to vote? I mean, can you read it any other way?
Well, I mean, for me, the Save Act is not going to pass because of the filibuster, because they would need at least 7 or 8 Democratic votes to pass that. And now remember also, all the Democrats, all we wanted to eliminate the filibuster, except for it was Manchin and Sinema. They wanted to eliminate the filibuster, and now our party loves the filibuster.
He's calling them hypocrites, and rightly so. Don't they want to discard these policies? It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Many positions Democrats once supported, they now oppose. Take the SAVE Act, for example. When Democrats initially faced it, they criticized it, but now they embrace it. Most Americans agree that voters should register and show ID before casting a ballot. Surveys show that support spans across racial lines, with both black and white citizens largely in agreement. Yet Democrats seem resistant. John Fetterman, for instance, is now under fire from the left for questioning his party on this issue. CNN even aired a live debate with Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic Party chair, highlighting how divided even their own base has become. The pressure is intense and the frustration is visible.
But requiring basic ID in order to vote is really popular. A Pew poll from a few months ago showed 83% of Americans, including 71% of your fellow Democrats, support requiring an ID to vote. Why are they wrong?
I haven't said that they're wrong. We know that states are the ones who are empowered to conduct elections, and every state should be allowed to decide the best way to proceed to ensure that there's a free and fair election. Here in New York, there are, in fact, voter identification requirements. The question is that what Republicans are trying to do.
But here's what gets left out. If registration requires evidence, doesn't the SEAC essentially undermine the arguments being made? He then points to New York, where reports show voters are already required to provide ID in some Democratic-run districts. So why fear that a national standard would follow? Logically, the process should be uniform across the country. Yet now he opposes it, insisting that states should individually decide whether ID is necessary to register.
In clear and blatant voter suppression, they know that if there's a free and fair election in November, they're going to lose. In fact, Republicans have been losing every single election since Donald Trump was sworn in January of last year, including most recently decisively in Texas, and of course, losing all across the country, up and down the ballot in the November off-year elections in places like New Jersey or Virginia or New York.
Yeah, and they've been losing. And I mean, Virginia is a good example. They have a requirement to show your ID, and Democrats won very, very handily across the way. So why not maybe even just take that off the table and say, okay, maybe not a passport or birth certificate, but show ID.
Well, first of all, every state is empowered to be able to make the decision on their own, and we completely and totally support that. What Donald Trump wants to do is try to nationalize the election. Translation.
Of course, but what exactly is happening here? He seems determined to make this election a national issue. The election is coming, votes are being cast, and yet he's acting like this is some urgent crisis. Everyone, left and right, agrees on basic procedures. So why are Democratic leaders making it such a big deal? It's puzzling, even embarrassing.
Steal it, and we're not going to let it happen. We stopped them in terms of their gerrymandering efforts, where they were going to try to redraw congressional maps in red states throughout the nation, not expect Democrats to respond forcefully, and try to rig the midterms. They failed. We've stopped Donald Trump from being able to federalize the National Guard, which we believe was probably...
As he walks away, he keeps yammering, but the audio isn't necessary. Look at Dana Bash. Her expression shows she's trying to protect him, trying to contain the chaos. Meanwhile, left-wing critics are raising alarms. Why are these people acting suspiciously? Statements like these feed the perception that something isn't right. At the center of this debate is a simple principle. Voters should prove U.S. citizenship to register and cast a ballot. This is widely supported and could easily be nationalized. So why the resistance? Figures like Hakeem Jeffries push back, but most agree it's common sense. And it's not just local figures under scrutiny. Federal politicians like Adam Schiff have also faced questioning over these issues. The questions are clear. Who gets held accountable? And why does the process seem so contentious when agreement is widespread?
What about the idea of voter ID, of photo ID being required to vote? Are you in favor of that? Can there be a compromise where Democrats and Republicans put forward photo ID as a requirement for voting?
So, Jonathan, what you've just asked is essentially Republicans have created distrust of the elections by making claims of non-existent fraud in the elections. And shouldn't we use the distrust they've created in order to enact a voter suppression law? Which
I feel like we're living in a simulation, he says, a world where even showing your identity is framed as voter suppression. What are they even talking about? Despite claims that someone is trying to cheat, it often seems like the real inconsistencies are coming from those making the accusations, especially when most of their party actually supports the measures in question. It's basic logic, yet the debate remains confusing. Meanwhile, Democrats like John Fetterman push back, saying this needs to pass on issues where nearly 90% of Americans agree. Party leaders often focus on the small dissenting minority. It's a pattern. The majority consensus is ignored in favor of a fraction of voices.
Me as a Democrat, I do not believe that it's unreasonable or to show ID just to vote. And I remind everybody that less than a year ago in Wisconsin, they added that to the Constitution by a 63%, passing to put that in the Constitution that you have to show ID to vote. And they also elected a very, very liberal justice into their Supreme Court. So it's not a radical idea for regular Americans to show your ID to vote. And it's absolutely, those things are not Jim Crow or anything. Of course, that's part of an awful, awful legacy of our nation for so long ago. But where we are now, trying to find a way forward, just trying to call balls and strikes, seeing what's unreasonable, hopefully we don't have to do, and pay the TSA people and everyone, secure our border, and focus on deporting all of those kinds of criminals, wherever they are.
Take the filibuster, for example. Once Democrats tried to eliminate it, but now it's suddenly a principle they defend fiercely. Hypocrisy, some say, and they're right. Positions they once opposed are now embraced simply because political circumstances have changed. Criticism exposes the inconsistency, yet the party continues to hold on to it as a key tool.
That's the guy that votes for that and supports that as a Democrat, and I don't ever want to vote to shut our government down again.
Right, and you are very much where the people are. Look, that's what most people would like to see. Prioritize the criminals. Take the criminals out of the country who are here illegally but are also committing crime. But I mean, is there any other way to view the fact that Democrat leadership refused to have ID to vote? Is there any other way to read it other than they want illegals to vote? I mean, can you read it any other way?
Well, I mean, for me, the Save Act is not going to pass because of the filibuster, because they would need at least 7 or 8 Democratic votes to pass that. And now remember also, all the Democrats, all we wanted to eliminate the filibuster, except for it was Manchin and Cinnamon. They wanted to eliminate the filibuster, and now our party loves the filibuster.
Again, there are people like John Fetterman who call out Democrats for hypocrisy and poor judgment. Adam Schiff, for example, claims the SAVE Act denies people the right to vote. But what does the legislation actually say? Let's break it down. The American Voter Eligibility Act, commonly known as the SAVE Act, is designed as a preventative measure. Its goal is straightforward. When registering to vote in federal elections, individuals must provide proof of U.S. citizenship. States cannot process a federal voter registration without this documentation. The law specifies acceptable forms of proof, including IDs that comply with the Real ID Act of 2005. It also requires states to establish a system for applicants to provide additional evidence of citizenship if needed. To ensure accuracy, states must take proactive steps to remove non-citizens from voter rolls and maintain reliable records. If someone registers without showing proper proof of citizenship, the bill allows private lawsuits against the election official who processed the application. It also establishes criminal penalties for knowingly registering to vote without proper documentation. In short, the SAVE Act is intended to protect the integrity of federal elections by making sure only eligible U.S. citizens can register and vote, while providing clear procedures and consequences to enforce compliance. At its core, all you have to do is prove you are a U.S. citizen and follow the proper procedures. It's simple, yet the Democrats' response makes them look bad. Reading the bill shows just how straightforward it is. It was presented to the House on January 13th, 2025, though it had been introduced even earlier. Despite being over a year old, Democrats have shown little interest.
And now our party loves the filibuster. And then I do think think the filibuster is a good thing, and it does force us to work together overall.
Right. Sure, absolutely. Yep.
But I will say this as a Democrat, I do not believe it's radical or extreme to just produce an ID to vote overall.
Exactly. All right.
In advancing it, that hesitation is exactly why the filibuster keeps coming up. The filibuster forces both Republicans and Democrats to work together to pass legislation. Removing it would let one party act alone, changing the balance of power. The filibuster has become one of the most debated tools in Congress. Eliminating it would allow Democrats to achieve their objectives without compromise. In practical terms, that means they wouldn't need to work with Republicans to pass legislation. They could push bills through as long as they held a majority in the House or Senate. This potential shift has led to discussions about what a post-filibuster Congress could look like, especially with projections suggesting Democrats may soon control both the White House and Congress. It's a bold and risky move, but for many within the party, it represents a chance to advance their agenda more freely. Yet suddenly, some Democrats argue that removing the filibuster isn't necessary. They present it as a matter of protecting democracy. But here's the question. If you already have the numbers to govern effectively, why hesitate? The answer seems less about principle and more about optics. Political leaders often weigh not just what they can achieve, but how it will be perceived by voters in history. And in this case, the hesitation reveals a tension between ambition and perception. Go back to the SAVE Act, for example. This legislation is straightforward. Ensure only U.S. citizens can register to vote in federal elections. States are required to verify citizenship, and non-compliance carries legal consequences. Yet even this simple preventative measure sparks controversy. Why? Because it challenges certain narratives and forces politicians to take a stand. Some fear losing political support, while others worry about appearing too aggressive in regulating elections. This tension is amplified when you consider the broader context. Millions of Americans support voter verification measures. Nearly everyone agrees that elections should be secure, accurate, and fair. Yet political strategy often overrides common sense. Leaders weigh whether passing straightforward legislation could risk alienating part of their base or create headlines that fuel opposition. In many ways, this is why the filibuster debate and the SAVE Act intersect. Both involve questions of cooperation, trust, and strategy in a politically polarized environment. So why does this scare some leaders so much? Because if procedures are enforced fairly and transparently, there's less room for political maneuvering. They can't rely on ambiguity or procedural loopholes to maintain advantage. Honest, enforceable rules might make elections more predictable, but also more accountable. And accountability in the current climate can feel risky. Ultimately, these debates come down to a simple choice: uphold principles of fairness and transparency or prioritize political convenience. The consequences affect not just the parties, but the integrity of the entire system. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to hear your thoughts on all this. Hit the like button if you found this informative, share your perspective in the comments, and stay tuned for the next update. Understanding the mechanics behind these debates is the first step toward a clearer picture of how our government operates and why these decisions matter.